Now, my next guest is someone who's taking the blogosphere and taking programs like Any Questions by storm. I heard her on Any Questions. I've never met the woman, but I heard her on Any Questions on the radio a few weeks ago, where she absolutely dominated the discourse, absolutely dominated the panel, even though she was just 25 years old, and it was the first time that I'd heard of her. I've now read several of her pieces in the New Statesman and have been consistently impressed. But I do think she's talking nonsense when she says that the sentence of 2 years and 8 months on the young man who threw a fire extinguisher from the 7th floor roof of the Millbank Tower during the student demonstration there was too harsh. However, I'm available to be persuaded. Laurie Penny, it is. Laurie, welcome to the show.
Hello, George. Thanks for saying such a nice thing.
No, it's heartfelt. Now, tell me, how did you come up with this idea that 2 years, 8 months for nearly killing people with a fire extinguisher was too harsh?
Well, I mean, I was looking at the news this week, and it just struck me that a couple of the people involved, I'm not sure, probably you and your listeners have all seen the specific case of the Derby gang who've been grooming and raping young girls.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the sentences handed down to members of that gang were actually lower than the sentence given to Edward Woollard.
Very peripheral members of that gang. Not the ringleaders.
Not the people who were convicted of rape, but these were still members of the gang. And I think it's very interesting that we're actually saying that Edward Woollard, who, luckily didn't hurt anyone, but I'm not sure was standing on that roof thinking, hey, I'm going to kill a policeman now. I don't think that was the intent. That he's been put on a moral path for something very stupid, essentially childish that he did, and no one was hurt. He's been put on the moral par with, rapists and child molesters.
Well, we've agreed already that it's not on the same par as the rapists. They got tens of years in prison. You're talking about peripheral members of a gang, some of whose members committed rape. But one of the dangers, Laurie, just a word in your ear on this from an older man, is the danger of whataboutery, the danger of moral relativism, of saying that something which is wrong should not be punished because something which is also wrong has either not been punished or not been punished sufficiently. Everyone saw this man on a roof lean over, see a crowd of people beneath him, and toss a fire extinguisher made of cast iron from a 7th floor height. I mean, it was an act of absolute madness or wickedness.
Well, I would say I would probably allege madness rather than wickedness, but I do think you're making a very fair point here. I think we can get caught up in what about this guy who got this sentence for a very long time if we want to. But I think part of the point is that this is clearly, and when the judge passed down the sentence, he said, this is we're giving this sentence, as a deterrent to make an example. Now, I'm not saying, and please don't get me wrong here, George, I'm not saying that Woollard did nothing wrong. I mean, clearly he's an idiot, and probably an idiot who at the time was a danger to himself and others. However, if you look at how many cases of, I've taken your warnings about whataboutery quite to heart. If you look at how many cases of GBH and violent assault, go through the courts and don't get punished to that extent, I think it's very interesting why this case has been singled out. Clearly, it's part of the reason it's been singled out is that the media have chosen to focus on this guy. Because of the context in which he dropped that fire extinguisher. It was, in the middle of a very high-profile riot, and, the image of, Edward Woollard as this violent thug has been used to completely decimate the student protest and the resistance movement to, the coalition's programme of austerity. And so I think, it worries me as someone who, like you, is very concerned with criminal justice and with how we operate our laws in a democracy. It concerns me deeply that maybe, and I'm not, making it clear, I couldn't make a clear judgment here, but it seems to me that maybe the law is being used to make a political statement, and it seems to me that that's totally wrong. I don't understand why you would use the courts, to make an example of someone. I don't believe in making examples of people. I think, he's a stupid boy. He did something very wrong, but he doesn't deserve to have his young life ruined in quite the way that it has been, when at the end of the day he did not hurt anyone. And there were people on those protests who did hurt people, the police.
Yes, indeed, and this is the point, you see. If we are to be credible when we denounce, as both of us have, the treatment of Jodie McIntyre, for example, by police officers on that demonstration, we have to be morally consistent. That recklessly violent behaviour is condemnable, deplorable, whomsoever carries it out. And whether it's a young demonstrator from a roof, or the police thugs that pulled a man out of his wheelchair and manhandled him across the road, not once but twice in the course of a subsequent demonstration to the one we are discussing. If we're not consistently morally credible on that, then we're selling ourselves and our cause short. Equally, I'd put this to you. You're painting a picture of his life being ruined, but he will in fact be out of prison by Christmas, because the sentence is not the headline sentence, but of course the automatic discounts and all the rest. Now,
the time will actually serve is less.
Yeah, I mean it's January now, and he'll be out by Christmas. It's not exactly transportation to Australia.
No, of course it's not. I think again, what's unfortunate for this young man, this idiotic twit, is that he's become the centre of a media storm and a witch hunt, and essentially, the due process of justice has rather been interrupted by the fact that he's become the centre of this media storm. Because, whoever, when he gets out of prison, and when he Young Offenders Institute he'll be going to. He will have a criminal record. He will have served a very significant time in his life. The transition between 18 and 20, he will have spent in prison or on probation. And, that's the time when you're meant to be going to university or looking for a job or both. What employer is going to want to take this guy on, really? I just feel... I can't help but feel for him in some ways. I'm sure he must be kicking himself, and rightly so. But it seems to me that, in some ways, the sentence was passed by the public before the judge actually handed the sentence down, and that, in some ways, is what worries me. I know we're talking about whether or not the sentence itself was justified, but it seems to me like a lot of the punishment that Edward Woollard is getting is not just from the judge. It's not just from the right and proper process of law. It's also from the public, from the media. And I'm not sure how you would feel about that. Is it right for the media to condemn people?
Well, of course, the media condemns people all the time, and sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong. But there is just no mitigating factor. You've said several times, Laurie, that he didn't hurt anyone. But it was the grace of God, if you believe in God, or pure luck, if you don't, that somebody wasn't killed. And by the way, it could have been anybody. It would have been just as bad, whoever it was. But you were there. It could have been you.
It could have been me, absolutely.
It could have been you. It could have been my children. It could have been anybody listening tonight's children who were there for a demonstration, there for a noble cause, and an act of absolute recklessness was carried out by this man, or youth, or boy. There's some controversy about what we should be calling him. I'm getting a lot of people saying he's a man, not a boy. He's 18. I'll call him a boy. He's a boy to me. It was absolute recklessness that could have killed any of us.
Yeah, I think we can all probably agree that whether or not he's a man, he's got a lot of growing up to do.
Yes.
But I utterly agree with you, Jordan. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here to defend Edward Woollard. I think he did a very, very stupid thing, and I think in terms of what the left and what protest movements need to do, you're absolutely right. We need to be very, very self-policing. The police don't do it for us. This is what and this is what has interested me about the protests in some respects, is that as soon as he threw that fire extinguisher off the roof, there were people saying, who is that idiot? Let's get him. Let's, make sure the police, have his name. There were people, and, I've seen on protests subsequent to that, people being very, very careful, people stopping each other from, throwing sticks at the police. Obviously, it still happens because, we can't stop everything. But I've been on the front line of protests where very, very scared children are being faced with police horses and police, hitting them with batons. And you have people running out to the front of the line, throwing themselves in front of the police, saying, don't throw anything, don't hurt anyone, we can't be like them. And I actually, I absolutely agree that if we want to have a right and proper attitude to our cause, we have to have the moral high ground, which is why, I absolutely support the fact that Edward Woollard has been in court and, been tried and convicted. I just think that it may have been a little excessive. That's all I'm trying to say here.
Well, you've said it bravely and eloquently, which is no more than I expected. That was Laurie Penny, who's a brilliant young writer on the New Statesman, a blogger, and a young woman who took Any Questions on the BBC by storm. She's wrong on this one, but she's right on most things, and she's only 25. When she's 35, she's going to be really something, I'll tell you.